how did you get into the project of Superman? What was the first kind of contact, and how did you wind up being cast?
I was actually shooting The People That Time Forgot, which was another great epic that I did with plastic cardboard dinosaurs and dear Doug McClure. And I was away in the Canary Islands, and I heard about this film that was being shot, but I had no idea what it was. I wasn't a Superman fan. I knew who Superman was. I was away in the Canary Islands. I came back to England and was invited to audition. And the story amongst my friends and family and fans is well known, because I think I had 8 separate appointments to meet the director, Richard Donner, and 8 times he cancelled me. And we were at Shepperton. I think we were meeting at Shepperton Studios, and I was working at Pinewood. So I would go over to Shepperton, and things happened. And because I was shooting in the day, it was always an evening appointment. Anyway, on the 8th time, dear Mary Selway, who was the most wonderful casting lady, who sadly also isn't here any longer, Mary said, you really should try. This is right up your street. Now, what I didn't know was that they were looking for a tough old bitch. And a bunch of other stuff. But she said, this is right up your street. So I went along. I was kept waiting for at least 20 minutes, and I was in a foul, pissy, 27-year-old, I know better than you mood. And I went in to meet Richard Donner, who sat there with those blue-tinted glasses, all the way from LA, which to a little London girl I thought, you pretentious man, I shall show you. And I gave off some sort of attitude, it seems, that started the ball rolling. And there was a lot more to the audition, but that was the initial contact. And I think you came further for your meetings, didn't you? Because weren't you away? You'd been in India, I remember.
Yeah, I'd been out of work for about 7 or 8 years, and I was living in an ashram in Pune.
You wore a lot of orange, I remember.
I was in orange.
Yeah, I remember.
I hadn't cut my hair or beard for 7 years, and I wasn't even Terence. I was Swami Deva Viten. But the night that I'd arrived in Pune, I'd stayed in a hotel called the Blue Diamond Hotel. And it must have had, like, postcards. And I must have sent one to my long-suffering agent, but I don't remember that. Anyway, there was a group of English sannyasins there, and on Sundays, they used to go to this Blue Diamond Hotel, and they'd have what was laughingly called full English breakfast, which was like anything that was English. So it was like fried bread, mince pie, it was like everything. And I was going in to have breakfast with them, and they're great cineasts in India. They see everything. And as I was walking in, the concierge said, Mr. Terence, we got a cable for you, sir. And I said, are you sure? Yes, we got a cable for you. And he pulled out this like dog-eared, it was a telegram. Do you remember the ones with typed addresses stuck on? And I looked at it, and it said, to Clarence Stamp. The Rough Diamond Hotel, Pune, India. And immediately the psychic weight of this cable became pounds, And I flipped it open, and it said, would you be prepared to come back to England to talk to Richard Donner about Superman 1 and 2? You have scenes with Marlon Brando. And I thought, my life is about to change.
And so then you're both on set. And what was that like, being on set with Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman and Ned Beatty, all of these wonderful
Can I just
cast?
say, before we talk about Marlon Brando, do you know what it's like being on set with Terence Stamp? What a joy and a delight. Every morning it was an absolute pleasure. And I have to just quickly say, because people say they know I'm a fidget, they know I'm mess around and I'm all over the place. The stillness of Ursa and the supervillains is all down to Terence, because you were so wonderfully still and so calming. And I remember you once said to me, we need to be different because we're aliens. We need to be different. And I used to think I was fascinated because you drank mint tea and you did noises and stuff. And I'd never known anything like it. So I want to thank you for Ursa, because I honestly would never have got there without you.
Listen, I'm looking for a lover that won't blow my cover, you know.
But didn't you do a similar thing with Jack O'Halloran, who played Non, who's the real big kind of third of the triumvirate of baddies?
The thing about Jack is that he's a genuinely ferocious guy, you know. He was a heavyweight boxer. There were these rumors about him getting up to all kinds of stuff with the mafia, you know. And but on the set, he was what I call a heavy rapper. And he would intimidate people into kind of listening to him, and he would tell these amazing stories, you know. So I went along with him for like a couple of days, and but he was really keen to be like a straight actor, you know. He saw this as a big start for him, and so after I'd really kind of sussed him out the first couple of days, I said to him, now listen, I'm the general, okay? And just between you and I only want you to think that. That's all I want from you. I just want this one thing, is that whenever you see me, remember, I'm the general, and I'm a real wicked bastard, you know, so. He said, yeah, and I said, that's the way we'll do it. We'll practice. It's like method acting. We'll practice it off the set, but when we get on the set, it will come over, you know. We're doing this together. He said, right. So then that afternoon, I was called to the set, and it was in a big sound stage that was kind of empty, but the set was quite small, and it was, I think it was the interior of the White House, and we just kind of come in through the roof, you know. And so they call me, I arrive, and everybody's there, and nobody's doing anything. And I say, what's the problem, you know? And they say, well, and I hear right on the other side of the set, Jack rapping to somebody. And it's obviously, it's a long story, you know. So I said, Jack! You bastard! I'm ready and I'm waiting! And all the crew went like, shit. And the talking stopped immediately, and there was this kind of silence. And then there were these huge footfalls all the way across the stage, you know. And he came very close. Sorry, General.
So it's well known, it's in our program note that you can pick up, the controversy around Superman and Richard Donner being transplanted with Richard Lester for the second film. And I feel as though it'd be remiss if we didn't mention it, and partly because Terence has been very, very involved in the curatorial process of this, putting the season together, and he's really driven us, my colleagues here, forward in finding materials for some films that were quite hard to find materials for, and this was one of them. It was difficult to get a proper DCP with the right assets involved to screen this properly in a cinema. I have a feeling it might be the first time it's been done in a public screening in a proper way.
I think it's been first time it's been done on like a really big screen, you know. And I don't think there's an actual print. And I got Dick Donner to introduce me to the head of Warner Brothers. And I had the head of Warner Brothers call the head of the BFA here and find some way to do it. But the tragedy really of it was that we were all crazy in love with Richard Donner. I just can't tell you what a great guy he is. You know, he's kind of big in every sense of the word, and he's funny, and he's a wonderful director. And we were shooting the two things together, and I think the budget for the two, I think, was 8 big ones. You know, it was like 8 mil. And after about 25 weeks, he'd spent like 20 million, you know. And the producers, and this is the story I heard. This may not be gospel, but this is what I heard. I heard the Sorkins, they went to him and they said, okay, stop working on part 2. Just finish part 1. So he said, fine. So we finished part 1. It opened, and it was the biggest film, the biggest box office ever known, you know. And they immediately, the producers immediately fired him and replaced him with Richard Lester. But it was a terrible thing. Obviously, it was terrible for him, but it was terrible for us because we kind of loved him. And there was no way we could not go back. Am I right in that?
Absolutely. That's exactly the story that I heard. And I don't even know that I really knew where Dick had gone. You know, we just seemed to turn up again months later, and we started shooting, and suddenly Richard Lester. And I cannot tell you how different the two directors were. Now, I have to say, as a young actress, it's the most wonderful, for me, it was a marvelous experience to reshoot, as we did, a lot of the scenes with somebody that was so different, was, for experience-wise, was amazing. But we went from having this wonderful, larger-than-life, loving, gregarious man to Dick Lester, who was much quieter and didn't have the same sort of humor, did he? And everybody was pissed off. I mean, the cast were, I mean, particularly Chris and Margot, I know, were deeply, deeply upset and felt very betrayed. And it was difficult, wasn't it?
Yeah, the magic, this is something I feel I should explain, but you'll all really understand it. And that one of the magic moments of making movies is that from time to time you get a crew that becomes a troupe, and you really feel like you're in one of Shakespeare's companies with Shakespeare writing and touring around England doing stuff. In other words, 2 and 2 make 7, you know. And that happens rarely. But when it happens, it's so wonderful because you can't wait to get to work, you know. And that was really down to Richard Donner, because he had my feeling. I mean, I'm a romantic, but I just felt he had this kind of aura that just enclosed all of us, you know. And the fact is, when he was let go, I mean, none of us, we just didn't want to go back, you know what I mean? It wasn't the fact that we didn't think Richard Lester was a great director. It was just, it was like Richard Donner's project. And the reason that, you know, we're here and this is being shown is I just feel nobody in England has ever seen it, you know, and I would really, and as it's the only really successful film I've ever been in, and
That's not
I
true.
can rarely get through the day without somebody coming up to me and saying, "Kneel before Zod, you git," you know. So I'm very, very, very happy we're very happy to share it with you.